My name is Joann Benzinger, and I'm a fine art photographer from Travelers Rest, South Carolina. One of my favorite parts of working in photography is finding the right medium to print my photographs on. They make so many beautiful art papers nowadays that you can send through your printer and come out with terrific results. But sometimes you need something a little bit different to really capture the essence of the photograph and make it sing. The problem is, not all surfaces are meant to go through your inkjet printer, and they don't receive that ink and it doesn't dry properly. inkAID has this great series of products. You can coat almost any surface. If it can fit through your printer and you coat it with inkAID, this pre-coat will make it so that the inkjet pigments will soak in the way they're meant to. It will dry and you'll have a beautiful product. You can print on almost anything. I've printed on different types of material, cotton, chiffon, silk. I've printed on tea bags. We're going to try printing on a couple of different interesting textured papers that I've just picked up at different craft stores. You're going to find out what a great end product you get when you coat your papers properly. So let's talk about a little bit of prep work before we get going. If you notice, first of all, I've got some craft paper down on my table, and that's so that I can preserve the surface of my table. The craft paper I don't care so much about, but this stuff is liquid and it's going to get everywhere. So a little bit of craft paper will save you a lot of heartache later. Secondly, I've got all of my papers and I stacked them by the size that they are. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I start this process, I'm going to start with my stack of tea bags. I'll coat the top one. I'll move it aside. I'll coat the second one. Because this is liquid, all of the stuff that leaks through this very fine material is going to be on the next piece, so I'm not wasting any. I will still get some down on the craft paper, but at least I'll save most of it, and it'll be basically just coating the piece underneath it while I'm coating the one on top. One of these sponges works really great for applying this solution. I've got a cup to pour my stuff in. So if you look at the bottom here, you can see that the product has settled. It's going to do that during shipping, and it's going to do it when it's just sitting on the shelf. You want to make sure that you've adequately mixed this up, because that's the important stuff down here. This is where the color is. The coating is up here, but the colorant, that this lilac here, is down in the bottom. So I want to make sure that gets mixed in. And then finally, we'll need to have some plastic wrap to dry our coated papers on. This is nothing more than the cellophane envelope that some poster board came in. I cut it apart, I'll lay it flat, and then I've got a surface to put those papers down so when they dry, they don't stick. Well, let's give coating some papers a go then, shall we? I have an applicator. I have some lilac pre-coat. I also have some pearlescent pre-coat. I have another applicator, so I've got one for each color. I've got a lint remover because sometimes those applicators get full of lint, cat hair and whatnot. And if I want to just make sure that I'm not getting that on my photo paper, then I'll just run the lint remover over the top of it. Okay, so this is my mulberry paper. I'm going to coat this one in lilac. I have 3 pieces stacked together because it's probably going to leak through from one down to the next. So that will make it so anything that soaks down will actually get on the piece underneath it, and I won't be wasting any unnecessarily. I am going to do the top one in lilac, the second one in pearl, and I think the third one in both. So here we go. The main thing that you're looking for is that you get a nice even coating. It doesn't matter if you go all the way to the edge. You're probably going to have a border on your photo. And if you're really good, you can use those edges creatively. Let's see how pretty that can be. That can become part of your art. So again, the main thing is you want to make sure that you get a nice even coating. Okay, I'm going to set this one aside on my cellophane so that it can dry, and then after it's dried I will probably give it a second coat. There. All right, so we've got 3 pieces that are coated. As you can see, it does leach down to the craft paper, and that's why we layer them. This one's my bonus piece. I think I'm going to coat it in both silver or gold and bronze and see what happens. And as you can see, they're really pretty. This one that I did the two-tone one on is really gorgeous. I like that a lot. I'm looking forward to printing on it. But some of them are a little bit wrinkled, and so I'm just going to press them because the flatter they are when they go through my printer, the better result. So I'm going to just give my papers the best shot that I can by pressing them with a cool iron. I'm going to put a piece of paper between my coated papers and the iron. I just want to take great care. So I've got it on a piece of wood because that's not going to react to the heat the same way fabric would on an ironing board. I don't want to take a chance on my coated papers sticking to the ironing board. So I've got it set to the synthetic setting. I'm gonna try not to go as high as cotton because I'm worried that that might be too hot. That's considerably better. That's good. So let's attach some paper to a carrier sheet. Now, what you might ask is the purpose of a carrier sheet. Well, some of these papers are so flimsy and they're so sheer that the printer won't recognize them as paper. The solution to that is to use a carrier sheet that is going to lead that fragile paper through the printer. Now, when I'm doing something that's transparent and printing on that, the carrier sheet actually notifies the printer that there's something in there. The clear paper, it just doesn't even recognize. So you have to at least have a white edge at the front so that the printer will see, oh yeah, there's something here, I'm going to grab it. There's a little electronic sensor in there and it doesn't pick up on that clear. So for this process, it's not going to stick on here for very long, so I'm not going to worry about using some expensive artist tape, acid-free or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and use masking tape. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that my edges are clean. So when I tape this down, I want to make sure that this is a clean solid edge, and this is a clean solid edge. I don't want to have any tape hanging over where the sticky side is underneath, and I don't want any crinkly stuff so that the printer snags up on that. So I'm just going to put this on here, and I'm going to carefully tape it down. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that the tape meets up with that edge of the paper. And naturally, I want to tape off as little of the good surface as possible because that's where I want to print. So I don't want to, you know, tape off this much of it and all of a sudden I've only got a tiny little strip to use. I want to be real careful about that, so I've got as much surface to use as I possibly can. Not worried about this being squared up at all. The print will just square itself up. One thing I want to be careful of, I don't want to stretch this tape out so far that it starts to curl the paper, because that will cause problems in itself. So I want to give it a firm foundation, but I don't want to cause a lot of stress on the paper. All right, now you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, you'll notice this piece. You'll notice this piece right here isn't even. I'm going to have to trim that off. This piece also is not even with the edge. I need to trim that off so that it doesn't cause any problems with the printer. This bottom piece, I'm going to assume that when I feed my paper through, this is the head. This is the head part that will go down first into the printer, and this is the end. You don't have to print this bottom edge. It probably won't cause you any problems. You can, if you want to, you know, just go with an abundance of caution. I tend to err on the side of caution. There we go. This sheet is ready for printing. If you're going to do a whole bunch of these and you want to set them under some books to make sure that they stay as flat as possible, you can do that. And I will meet you back here when it's time to print something. Well, finally, we're at the point where we're ready to start printing our photographs. We've got our papers all prepped. We've got them taped down to the carrier sheets. We've got our photographs picked out, and I think we're ready to go. Just a couple of last things that we want to think about. When you're getting your document ready to print, I don't know what kind of software program you're using. I'm usually in Photoshop, Lightroom, something like that. So when I go in to print my document, I have to tell the software where on the paper I want it to be printed. And what I mean by that is we've taped this prepared paper to the carrier sheet, but we've got tape on this first inch. So I don't want to start printing my document on that first inch. I want to make sure that it's positioned low enough on the paper so that when it prints, it's all on that prepared paper. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're preparing your document for print. So when I'm printing, I am printing to an Epson Stylus Pro 3880. It's a bit of an older printer, but it's a real workhorse and it's served me really well. Another thing to be mindful of is how thick is the medium that you're going to be sending through your printer. If it's something that's really thick, you might have to make some adjustments to your printer in order for it to actually go through without snagging on the printer head. Or if you've got something with a heavy texture, like some of this handmade paper has real crunchy pieces in it. If you're sending something through your printer that's very thick, or has those inconsistencies in the texture, those little chunky pieces, you're probably going to want to be able to widen the platen gap. And what that means is during your setup for print, you'll get a little dialog box. And if you've got a good printer, then you probably have some advanced options that you can work with, and one of those is going to refer to the platen gap, and that's just going to make a bit of a difference between how far down the head, the print head, is going to sit in relationship to the paper. If you widen it a little bit, it'll just be raised a little bit and it'll have to spit that ink down onto the paper, but it's going to make all the difference in the world. I think that'll about do it, so let's get to some printing. I wanted to talk just a minute about releasing this from the carrier sheet. So you see we've got this textured paper that we printed on mounted to the carrier sheet like we did earlier. There's two things I could do. I could just peel this tape up, peeling away from the picture so that I don't accidentally tear across the picture. I don't want to tear across the picture because if I actually tear the paper, I'm going to lose the image. So tearing away, I prefer this method because it still allows for a little bit of a border, and I may need that when I put this behind a mat. The other option would be to use an X-Acto knife and a ruler and then just cut your image out, and you could cut it exactly to the size that you need it, or you could cut it a little bit and give it a border. That's up to you. I like to peel, and if I need to cut it, I can always cut it later, but I would rather peel it for now and then take it as it comes. If I decide I need to cut it, I will just cut it. There. See how much of that paper actually came up with that piece of tape? Because this tape has been on there for a few days already. But because I tore away from the picture, I didn't damage my image. So let's compare this. Do we want it on the white or the black? Mulberry? I really think I like this one on the white. So it's good for you to have options before you decide what it is you're going to do with it. the main takeaway here is when you peel this off the paper and you look at it and it seems so sheer and you're wondering what to do with it, and sometimes the vibrancy doesn't even seem like it's there. Just remember that if you give it a coat of varnish, that's going to make the colors pop, and what you layer it against is going to make your colors pop. So keep those two things in mind.